The secret every dog keeps from their owner, but desperately wishes you knew. Here's what's going to blow your mind. Your dog has been trying to tell you something incredibly important every single day for years, but you've been completely missing it. And when you discover what it is, you'll realize that every misbehavior, every strange look, every seemingly random action has actually been your dog desperately attempting to communicate with you in a language you never learned to speak. By the end of this video, you'll understand why that guilty look isn't guilt at all, why your dog yawns when they're not tired, and the shocking reason why most dog bites could be completely prevented if owners just knew what to look for. If you enjoy fascinating insights like this and want to see more, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. The silent language you're ignoring every day, picture this. You walk into your living room and see your dog with that look. You know, the one ear slightly back, avoiding eye contact, maybe licking their lip. He knows he did something wrong. You think, but what if I told you that your dog isn't feeling guilty at all? What if that look you've been interpreting as shame is actually your dog trying to tell you something completely different, something that could change your entire relationship? Here's the truth that's going to revolutionize how you see your furry best friend. Dogs don't communicate like humans. While we rely heavily on words and verbal cues, dogs are masters of a sophisticated visual language that we're almost completely blind to. And this disconnect isn't just causing misunderstandings, it's causing real problems. Researchers at Arizona State University made a startling discovery that changes everything we thought we knew about understanding our dogs. They showed people videos of dogs reacting to different situations. The exact same dog, displaying the exact same behavior. But here's the kicker. When people saw the dog reacting to a vacuum cleaner, they said the dog looked agitated and stressed. When they saw the identical dog behavior but with a leash in the background, they described the dog as happy and excited. The dog's actual behavior, completely identical in both videos. This means you're not reading your dog's emotions based on what your dog is actually doing. You're reading the situation around your dog and making assumptions. And your dog knows it. Think about the last time you thought your dog was being stubborn or naughty. What if I told you that in that moment, your dog might have been desperately trying to communicate discomfort, anxiety, or even physical pain, but you completely missed the signals because you were looking at everything except your dog? Dogs live in a world where they're constantly sending us messages through their body language. A slight ear position change, the speed of their tail wag, the way they hold their mouth, these aren't random behaviors. They're a complex communication system that's been refined over thousands of years of evolution alongside humans. But here's where it gets really interesting and a little heartbreaking. Dogs are what researchers call watchers, while humans are listeners. We're literally speaking different languages. You're waiting for barks and whines to tell you how your dog feels, while your dog is desperately trying to show you through dozens of subtle visual cues that you walk right past every single day. Let me give you some examples that will probably make you rethink every interaction you've had with your dog this week. When your dog yawns, you probably think they're tired, right? Wrong dogs yawn when they're stressed or trying to calm themselves down in tense situations. It's actually a signal that they're feeling anxious and trying to when they lick their lips and there's no food around. They're not just being weird, they're showing you that they're uncomfortable or nervous about something in their environment. When they scratch themselves but they don't have fleas or skin issues, they're displaying what's called a displacement behavior, essentially fidgeting because they're feeling stressed or uncertain. And here's one that's going to shock you. When your dog shows you the whites of their eyes, what experts call whale eye, they're not being dramatic. They're telling you they're feeling threatened or overwhelmed and they want you to give them space. But how many times have you seen that look and thought it was cute or funny? The most heartbreaking part, according to the Centers for Disease Control, approximately 4.5 million dog bites occur in the United States every year. But here's what most people don't realize. Dogs almost never bite without warning. They give us signal after signal after signal that they're uncomfortable, stressed, or scared. The problem is, we don't see the signals, so we don't respond appropriately, and eventually, our dogs feel like they have no choice but to escalate to more dramatic communication. Every single day, your dog is having a one-sided conversation with you. They're telling you when they're happy, when they're worried, when they need space, when they want to play, when they're not feeling well. But we humans have created this tragic communication gap because we keep looking for human-like expressions in a species that has their own incredibly sophisticated way of talking. I want you to think about something right now. When was the last time you really looked at your dog, not just glanced at them, but actually observed them? Have you been missing their attempts to communicate with you? Drop a comment below and tell me about a time when you might have misunderstood what your dog was trying to say. I read and respond to every single comment because understanding our dogs better is something I'm passionate about. But here's what's going to absolutely blow your mind. Everything I just told you about communication, all these missed signals and misunderstandings, that's just the surface level. Because there's something much deeper happening in your dog's inner world. Something that most dog owners never even suspect exists. Your dog isn't just trying to communicate their immediate needs with you. They're carrying around a complex emotional reality that's far more similar to yours than you ever imagined. And when you don't understand their communication, you're not just missing their messages, you're missing their feelings. And those feelings, they're more powerful and more important than you ever realized. What you're about to discover will completely change how you see that look in your dog's eyes, and why understanding it might be the most important thing you can do for your four-legged family member. If you're finding these insights as fascinating as I do, and you want to keep learning about the incredible inner world of our canine companions, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Trust me, we're just getting started, and what comes next will transform your relationship with your dog forever. Your dog's secret inner life is more human than you think, so you've just discovered that your dog has been trying to communicate with you in ways you never noticed. But what I'm about to reveal will shake you to your core, because it's not just about communication, it's about what your dog is actually feeling inside their mind every single day. For decades, people assumed that dogs lived simple lives, eat, sleep, play, repeat. We thought they were happy as long as they had food and shelter. But groundbreaking scientific research has uncovered something extraordinary. Your dog's emotional world is far more complex, deep, and surprisingly human-like than anyone ever imagined. Here's the scientific bombshell that changes everything. Dogs have a limbic system. That's the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions, and it's remarkably similar to ours. This isn't just speculation or wishful thinking from dog lovers. This is hard neuroscience. When researchers look at brain scans of dogs experiencing different emotions, the patterns they see are so similar to human emotional brain activity that it's honestly shocking. But it gets even more incredible. Scientists have discovered that dogs don't just experience basic emotions like happiness or fear. They experience complex emotions like excitement, distress, anger, joy, and even affection in ways that mirror human emotional experiences. We're not just talking about simple reactions here. We're talking about genuine, deep emotional states that can last for hours, days, or even longer. Let me paint you a picture of what this really means. When you leave for work in the morning and your dog gets that sad look, they're not just missing the fun of having you around. They're experiencing something remarkably similar to what you might feel if someone you deeply loved suddenly disappeared without explanation. When you come home and they're jumping with joy, that's not just excitement about food or walks, that's genuine, deep emotional relief and happiness that their beloved human has returned safely. And here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. Dogs can experience emotional contagion. That means they can literally catch and mirror the emotions of other dogs and even humans around them. If you're stressed, your dog doesn't just notice it. They can actually start feeling stressed themselves. If you're happy and relaxed, your dog can absorb that positive energy and feel genuinely more content. Think about that for a moment. Your emotional state is directly affecting your dog's emotional well-being every single day. But here's the part that most people miss. It works both ways. Studies have shown that positive interactions between dogs and their owners, things like petting, talking sweetly, or just spending quality time together, actually increase oxytocin levels in both the human and the dog. That's the same hormone that bonds mothers to babies and couples in love to each other. Your dog isn't just your pet. From their perspective, you're their emotional partner in a genuine biochemical bond that's as real as any human relationship. But now, I need to tell you something that might be hard to hear. Recent research involving 60 dogs in controlled scenarios revealed something troubling. Dogs show significant stress, responses in situations that humans typically interpret as neutral or even positive. When dogs were exposed to different emotional scenarios, their cortisol levels, that's the stress hormone, spiked in ways that showed they were experiencing genuine anxiety and distress. Even when their human companions thought everything was fine, this means your dog might be emotionally struggling right next to you, and you might not even know it. Those subtle signs we talked about earlier, the lip licking, the yawning, the looking away, those aren't just communication attempts. They are your dog's way of trying to cope with emotional distress that they can't escape from. And here's what makes this even more heartbreaking. Positive emotional states in dogs are much more subtle and harder to recognize than negative ones. So while we might miss the signs that our dog is anxious or upset, we're even more likely to miss the signs that they're truly deeply happy and content. This means we might be accidentally ignoring not just our dog's problems, but also missing opportunities to recognize and reinforce their genuine joy. Let me give you a real example of how this plays out. You probably think your dog rolling over for belly rubs is always a sign of happiness and trust, right? Sometimes it is, but sometimes that same behavior is actually what's called an appeasement gesture. Your dog is essentially saying, "Please don't be upset with me. I'm completely vulnerable here." The position looks identical, but the emotional state behind it is completely different. Now, here's where this gets really personal. Dogs form what scientists call emotional memories. That means that negative experiences don't just hurt them in the moment, they can create lasting emotional impacts that affect how they feel about similar situations in the future. But the flip side is also true. Positive emotional experiences create lasting feelings of safety, joy, and connection. Every interaction you have with your dog is either building positive emotional memories or potentially creating negative ones. And here's the thing that most dog owners never realize. Your dog is constantly making emotional assessments about their relationship with you based on whether they feel understood and emotionally safe. Dogs who feel emotionally understood and supported develop what researchers call secure attachment, basically. They feel confident, happy, and emotionally stable. But dogs who don't feel emotionally understood can develop anxiety, behavioral problems, and even depression. Yes, dogs can experience genuine depression, and it's more common than most people realize. I want you to really think about this for a moment. Comment below and tell me, when you look at your dog right now, what do you think they might be feeling? Not what they need: food, water, exercise, but what they're actually feeling emotionally. Are they content? Anxious? Bored? Lonely? Happy? I'll respond to your comments because I think this kind of awareness is the first step toward building a deeper emotional connection with our dogs. But here's what's going to shock you even more. Everything I just told you about your dog's rich emotional life, all those feelings, all that complexity, all those emotional memories, when those emotional needs aren't being met, when your dog feels misunderstood or emotionally unsafe, something happens that most dog owners completely misinterpret. They start displaying behaviors that we call problems or misbehavior. But what if I told you that almost every behavior we consider bad is actually your dog's desperate attempt to communicate an emotional need that isn't being met? What if your dog isn't being bad at all? What if they're just emotionally suffering and trying to tell you in the only way they know how? The behaviors you've been calling disobedience might actually be cries for emotional help that you've been missing completely. The truth behind every problem behavior will break your heart. What if I told you that your dog has never, not once, misbehaved out of spite or stubbornness? What if every single behavior you've labeled as bad is actually your dog desperately trying to tell you something important about their emotional state? And you've been completely missing the message. This is going to fundamentally change how you see your dog forever. Here's the scientific truth that will revolutionize your relationship. Behavioral researchers have discovered that what we call problem behaviors in dogs almost always stem from emotional distress, not deliberate disobedience. Your dog isn't trying to make your life difficult. They're trying to communicate an emotional need that they literally don't know how else to express. Let me start with a behavior that drives dog owners absolutely crazy. Destructive behavior. You know the scene: you come home to find your couch cushions shredded, your shoes chewed up, or holes dug in your yard. Your first instinct is probably to think your dog is being vengeful or bored. But here's what's really happening. Destruction is often a physical manifestation of separation, anxiety, or emotional distress. When your dog tears up your belongings, they're not thinking, "I'll show them for leaving me alone." They're experiencing genuine emotional panic. Imagine feeling like the most important person in your life might never come back, and you have no way to understand why they left or when they'll return. That anxiety has to go somewhere. And for dogs, it often comes out through physical activity, chewing, digging, pacing. But here's where it gets even more heartbreaking. Dogs don't understand the concept of property damage. When they're chewing your favorite shoes, they're often choosing items that smell most strongly. Like you, because your scent is comforting to them in their distressed state. They're literally trying to feel closer to you. Now let's talk about hyperactivity. You know, when your dog seems to have endless energy, jumping on walls, barking excessively, or acting like they've had too much caffeine. Research shows that anxious dogs often display what looks like excited behavior when they're actually in a state of emotional overwhelm. Here's a perfect example. A dog jumping frantically at the front of their kennel when a person approaches might look excited to see someone. But a dog jumping off the side walls of their kennel with no one around is displaying classic anxiety behaviors. Same jumping, completely different emotional state. The problem is, We often interpret both as excitement or hyperactivity when one is actually emotional distress. And here's something that's going to blow your mind about so-called disobedience. When your dog doesn't come when called, sits slowly when asked, or seems to ignore your commands, they might not be being stubborn at all. They might be in an emotional state where they literally cannot process and respond to your requests normally. Fear, anxiety, and stress actually affect a dog's cognitive abilities. Just like how you might have trouble concentrating or remembering things when you're extremely stressed, dogs experiencing emotional distress can have difficulty focusing on training commands or behaving in ways that normally come easily to them. Let me give you some real examples of how we misread these emotional communications. That guilty look your dog gives you when you find something destroyed, that's not guilt. Dogs don't experience guilt the way humans do. What you're seeing is actually appeasement behavior. Your dog is reading your body language and vocal tone, recognizing that you're upset, and displaying submissive behaviors to try to calm you down and avoid conflict. They learned that when you come home to a mess and get that tone in your voice, something unpleasant might happen, so they're trying to prevent it by showing you they're not a threat. But they have absolutely no understanding that their earlier behavior caused your current mood. Here's another one that breaks my heart. Resource guarding. When dogs become protective over food, toys, or even people, we often label them as aggressive or dominant. But resource guarding almost always comes from a place of anxiety and insecurity. These dogs aren't trying to be controlling. They're genuinely worried that something important to them will be taken away, and they're trying to protect what makes them feel safe. The most tragic part is how we respond to these emotional communications. When a dog displays anxious behavior like pacing, whining, or destructive behavior, they're essentially saying, "I'm emotionally distressed and I don't know how to cope." But instead of recognizing this as an emotional need, we often respond with punishment, isolation, or increased restrictions, which actually makes the emotional distress worse. It's like if you were crying because you felt scared and alone. And instead of comfort, someone put you in a dark room by yourself. The original emotional problem doesn't get solved, it gets worse. And here's where this gets really serious. When dogs display subtle stress signals, things like lip licking, yawning, looking away, or becoming very still, they're giving us early warning signs that they're feeling emotionally overwhelmed. These are what animal behaviorists call distance increasing signals. Your dog is essentially saying, "I need some space right now because I'm not feeling emotionally okay." But because we don't recognize these signals, we often continue doing whatever is making them uncomfortable. From the dog's perspective, they tried to communicate politely, but we ignored them. So they might escalate to more dramatic communication, growling, snapping, or even biting. Here's the heartbreaking truth. Most dog bites happen not because dogs are aggressive, but because they've been giving distance signals that humans missed or ignored, and they feel like they have no other way to communicate their emotional distress. Think about your own dog right now. Have there been times when they seemed stubborn or difficult? Comment below and describe the behavior. I bet if we look at it through the lens of emotional communication rather than disobedience, we'll discover what your dog was actually trying to tell you. I respond to every comment because understanding these emotional signals is crucial for every dog owner. But here's what's going to give you hope. Once you understand that behavior problems are actually communication problems, everything changes. Because it means that the solution isn't about forcing your dog to behave differently. It's about learning to understand what they're trying to tell you and addressing their actual emotional needs. And when you start responding to your dog's emotional communications appropriately, something almost magical happens. Those problem behaviors often start disappearing on their own because your dog no longer needs to use desperate measures to get your attention about their emotional state. But the question is, how do you actually learn to decode these emotional messages? How do you bridge the communication gap between your emotional world and theirs? How do you transform your relationship from one of constant misunderstanding to one of deep, genuine connection and mutual understanding? The answer is simpler than you think, but it requires a complete shift in how you see every interaction with your dog. And once you make this shift, you'll wonder how you ever lived without truly understanding what your best friend has been trying to tell you all along. The simple steps that will transform your relationship forever. Imagine looking into your dog's eyes and finally understanding exactly what they're trying to tell you. Imagine your dog feeling truly seen and heard for the first time in their life. This isn't just a dream. It's completely achievable, and it's simpler than you think. Everything you've learned so far has led to this moment. You now know that your dog has been communicating with you all along, that they have a rich emotional life, and that their problem behaviors are actually desperate attempts to communicate emotional needs. Now I'm going to give you the practical tools to bridge that communication gap forever. Step 1. Become an emotional detective. The first step is learning to read the 5 key stress signals that most dog owners miss every single day. Remember these like your life depends on it, because your dog's emotional well-being actually does depend on it. When your dog licks their lips and there's no food around, they're telling you they're feeling uncomfortable or nervous. When they yawn and they're not tired, they're trying to calm themselves down because they're feeling stressed. When they scratch, but they don't have an itch, they're showing displacement behavior, basically fidgeting because they're anxious. Here's the big one. When your dog turns their head away, but keeps their eyes on you, showing you the white of their eyes, that's called whale-eye. And it's your dog saying, I'm feeling overwhelmed and I need some space. And when they shake themselves off, but they're not wet, they're literally trying to shake off tension and stress. Starting today, I want you to spend just 5 minutes really watching your dog. Not glancing at them while you're on your phone or watching TV, actually observing them. You'll be amazed at how much they've been telling you that you've been missing. Step 2. Respond like you finally understand. Once you start seeing these signals, you need to respond appropriately. When you see stress signals, give your dog space. Turn your body sideways instead of facing them directly, avoid direct eye contact, and let them approach you when they're ready. When you see positive signals, a relaxed body, soft eyes, mouth slightly open in a relaxed way, that's when you know your dog is genuinely happy and open to interaction. These are your green lights for affection, training, or play. Step 3. Build emotional trust. Here's where the magic happens. Research shows that positive interactions between dogs and their owners increase oxytocin, the bonding hormone in both species. But it has to be interaction that your dog actually enjoys, not just what you think they should enjoy. Pay attention to what your dog actually seeks out. Do they come to you for gentle petting? Do they prefer playing games? Do they just like being near you quietly? Follow their lead instead of imposing your idea of affection on them. When your dog feels emotionally understood and respected, something incredible happens. Those destructive behaviors often decrease because your dog no longer feels the need to use dramatic measures to communicate their emotional state. They start trusting that you're paying attention to their subtler signals. Step 4. Create emotional safety. The final step is consistency. Dogs thrive on emotional predictability. When you respond to their communication signals consistently, giving space when they ask for it, engaging when they're ready, recognizing their emotional states, you create what researchers call secure attachment. A dog with secure attachment feels confident, emotionally stable, and deeply connected to their human. They don't develop anxiety disorders, destructive behaviors, or communication problems because they trust that their emotional needs will be met. The secret revealed. So here's the secret your dog has been keeping. The one they desperately wish you knew. They've never needed you to be perfect. They've just needed you to pay attention. They've been speaking to you in their own beautiful, complex language every single day, waiting patiently for you to learn how to listen. Your dog doesn't need expensive toys, fancy training, or perfect behavior from you. They need something much simpler and much more profound. They need to feel understood. They need to know that when they tell you they're scared, you'll help them feel safe. When they tell you they're happy, you'll share in that joy. When they tell you they need space, you'll respect that boundary. Every tail wag, every ear position, every subtle shift in their body language is your dog trying to connect with you on a deeper level. And now you have the tools to finally hear what they've been saying all along. The next time you look at your dog, remember this. You're not just looking at a pet. You're looking at a being with thoughts, feelings, and an incredible desire to communicate with you. They're not keeping secrets because they want to. They're keeping them because until now, you didn't know how to listen. But now you do. And that changes everything. Your relationship with your dog is about to transform in ways you never imagined possible. Because when a dog feels truly understood by their human, the bond that forms is unlike anything else in the world. Comment below and let me know. What's the first signal you're going to start watching for in your dog? I'll be here to help you decode what you discover. Because every dog deserves to be truly understood. If this journey into your dog's secret world has opened your eyes like it did mine, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Understanding our dogs isn't just about better behavior. It's about building the kind of relationship that both you and your dog have been dreaming of all along.